Hello everyone, welcome to the session on Mendelian genetics. In the last session, we discussed about Mendelian monohybrid and dihybrid process. And in this session, we are going to discuss about the four Mendelian laws of genetics. So before moving into the detailed discussion of Mendelian laws, we will have a quick recap of the historical perspectives or historical perspectives about the pattern of inheritance, or how the characters were inherited, or how the historians or how the philosophers or Greek philosophers, how they considered or how they hypothesized characters were inherited to the offsprings. So to begin with, the first hypothesis which was put forth about the inheritance of characters to the offsprings was proposed by Hippocrates, and the hypothesis of Hippocrates is considered to be somewhat similar to that proposed by Darwin. Although they lived in two different times, what they hypothesized or what they proposed had some similarity. So what they proposed was that Darwin, and the theory which was proposed by Darwin is considered to be called as the theory of pangenesis. And according to this view, what was similar in the proposal of both Darwin and Hippocrates was that both viewed or both suggested that each part of the body produces some particles, and these particles were called as gemmules by Darwin. And these gemmules, they somehow got collected in the semen, and it is these particular particles called as gemmules that is responsible for inheritance of the characters. So what they suggested was that the particles, every organ in our body produces some particles, or produces certain factors, and these factors, they are released into the blood or body fluids, and from the body fluids, these particular structures or characters, what Darwin and Hippocrates proposed was that these are the characters alone, or the characters itself. For say, if it is for eye color, the black eye color, the eye color, or the ones which are controlling the eye color, the fluid like materials from the eye, they leak out into this particular body fluids, and this particular fluid which is being mixed or blended with the body fluid is taken into the reproductive organ, for say the testis, and it is from the testes or through the semen, these particles which were deposited in the reproductive organ, they get transmitted to the next generation or inherited to the next generation. So Hippocrates believed that these gemmules were released from the parts of the body at the moment of copulation or during sexual intercourse. So it is at this point where Hippocrates and Darwin had a difference in opinion. Hippocrates believed that these gemmules were released only at the time of sexual contact, that is, during sexual contact. This particular the factors which are responsible for inheritance is are driven to the body fluids, and from the body fluids it reaches the reproductive structures, and from there it is transferred. According to Darwin, Darwin hypothesized or proposed that these gemmules, they are not only released in the body fluids during sexual contact, they are released always into the bloodstream or always into the fluid, and they mix in the fluid. So if you interpret the physical nature of the gemmules, both Darwin and Hippocrates considered that as to be fluid. So they mix up in the body fluid, and that is this fluid content is what is reaching the sexual organ, and that is being transmitted. But Darwin considered this particular process of character, or the particular features the controlling factors of the features, they were always released into the bloodstream, and that is being deposited. As a result, the characters can be taken in, or the characters can be inherited to the next generation. The student or the follower of Hippocrates, Aristotle, was completely against this hypothesis which was put forward by Hippocrates. And the reason for that is Aristotle suggested or pointed out the fact that individuals sometimes resemble their remote ancestors rather than their immediate parents. So, if inheritance of characters happens as suggested by Hippocrates, Aristotle says that the offsprings should resemble their immediate parent, not their remote ancestors. But at times you can see individuals who resemble their remote ancestors, and in such cases, what Hippocrates proposed cannot be taken into account. And what Aristotle proposed is that, and this Aristotle proposal or the conclusion of Aristotle can be correlated with the mode of inheritance pattern that is suggested or that is being considered to be true now. So his general conclusion was that what is inherited is not the characters themselves. As I told earlier, if it is the eye color itself is being, the color of the eye itself moves into the blood. That is, or that the fluid material which from the eye, it moves into the blood, and that is taken. So that it is the character itself is contributing to inheritance. That was suggested by both Darwin as well as Hippocrates. But Aristotle said that it is not the character itself. There is something that is controlling the character, and that is having the potential to control that character, and it is those particular factors or those particular potential factors that is controlling this particular character will be acting or will be responsible for inheritance. Okay, at the time when Aristotle suggested or hypothesized this, he did not know about genes or unit factors which was suggested by Mendel. It was purely their proposal or purely out of their intuition. They propose such things. So this particular conclusions which was put forward by Aristotle was not accepted during that time, but later after meiosis or after the rediscovery of Mendelian principles, and after mitosis, meiosis, etc., were explained in correct details as we know now, this particular conclusion, even though it was merely out of hypothesis or merely out of his intuitions, this can be taken into account. And there are many funny facts where Aristotle made, there are many places where Aristotle made some funny comments regarding hybrids. So we will see that. So we all know that there are animals which are called as hybrids. For example, the mule, which is a hybrid between a horse and a donkey. So so there was a question raised to Aristotle on how this hybrids are formed. And he also explained the formation of hybrid in definitely a funny way, and that is what we are going to see now. Aristotle considered giraffe as a hybrid. He considered giraffe as a hybrid of a camel, and a leopard, because they had the features, that means it was looking similar to a camel, and because of the spots, etc., it resembled a leopard. So he suggested that it is a hybrid. A giraffe is a hybrid of a camel and a leopard. And he also put forth a hypothesis about how hybrids form. So Aristotle believed that hybrids arise from Libya. It is because that during that particular time there was a saying that everything new or always come from Libya, and there was some natural or some of the geographical features or geographical specialities that led Aristotle to propose such a hypothesis on hybrid formation. So what Aristotle hypothesized about hybrid formation is that Libya is a dry or a dry area, and there is no enough water, and water is present in some water puddles or water pools. So all the animals they come in or gather in this water pools for taking water. And what he suggested was that when animals gather in such water pools, animals which are having almost similar sizes, and if animals or different animals are in the same gestational period, what happens is that they might cross. Okay, actually, it is appearing to be funny for us, but during that time, without any scientific interpretations or scientific experimentations, etc., only such hypotheses or intuitions can be made to answer such questions. So this or these are some of the historical hypotheses regarding the inheritance of characters to the next generation and hybrid formation, etc. So there are many more hypotheses and many more theories, etc. Before Mendel. I have chosen some just for the sake of an introduction. There are many more hypothesis which was put forward by many people to explain the process of inheritance. So without much delay, we are moving on directly to the law of Mendelian genetics, or Mendel's law of genetics. So Mendel carefully analyzed the results of monohybrid and dihybrid crosses. As we discussed in the first session, it was a painstaking 7 years experimentation process with many times a number of time repeating the same experiment with many repetitions made, etc., with correct calculations, correct recordings, etc. His The analysis of the results of his experiment brought to light some of the basic principles of heredity, and the results of the experiment is now considered, or it is put under 4 headings as 4 laws, which is considered as the Mendel's law of genetics. The first one being the law of unit characters, law of dominance, law of segregation, and the last one, law of independent assortment. Of which the first 3 laws proposed by Mendel is based on his monohybrid crosses, and the last one is based on the dihybrid crosses. So in some textbooks, or according to some authors, the first 2 laws, which is the law of unit characters and law of dominance, is considered as just principles of Mendel, and they consider the first law of Mendel as law of segregation. So whatever be the points discussed will be the same, just the matter with the title. So first we will see the first law of Mendel, which is the law of unit characters. So moving on to the first law, which is the law of unit characters. So in this law of unit characters, what Mendel says is that Mendel believed that the characters were not transmitted directly from generation to generation. And one thing was that till the time, or till Mendel analyzed the results of his experiment, the previous view was that the factors which are responsible for inheritance of characters were much like fluid, which is being mixed in the blood and that is being transmitted. Okay, the nature was a fluid-like which is mixed in blood. But here, after Mendel's monohybrid and dihybrid crosses, or after tedious experimentations, what he came up with is that Mendel suggested that this particles which are responsible for inheritance is not fluid-like. They are discrete particles and they are paired. So what Mendel, so if we diagrammatically explain this unit inheritance, if you take a cell, for example, the same pea plant as suggested by Mendel, Mendel says that for determining the flower color, for example, we take the flower color. To determine flower color in a particular plant, every cells of that particular plant will have a pair of discrete particles. So for controlling a character, there will be a pair of particles, discrete in the sense that they are separate from the fluid medium, they have an individuality, they are separate, and they are having they are discrete in the sense that they can be seen separately from the fluid mixture. That means he completely disagreed with what was believed earlier, that is the factors which are responsible for inheritance as fluid like. He suggested that there are two things to be noted here in law of unit characters. According to Mendel, he said that the factors which are controlling a particular character comes in pairs. There will be two. That means to control a character, for say you have a flower here for the pea plant and it is having the color red. To control this red color, there will be two factors. Okay, and it is these two factors which are responsible, these two factors which are present in the cell which is responsible for the expression of this red color. So for every character, Mendel hypothesized or proposed that for every character which is expressed in a particular plant or a particular organism, the factors which are responsible comes in pairs. And he said that they are seen as spherical structures seen in the cell in pairs. They are spherical entities seen inside the cell in pairs. And he termed the spherical entities or discrete particles as, he called it either as factors or as units. So a pair will be there to control a particular character or a particular trait. For say, if it is flower color, there will be two factors or two units, discrete particles, which will be controlling that flower color. For example, if you take our monohybrid cross or any Mendelian experiment, so Mendel in Mendel's experiment, he considered the first line or the F1 parents as pure line or true bred parents, and in such a case, if one of the parent is having a red flower color, we'll hypothesize how the factors might be. In such cases, that particular plant will have two factors like this in pairs, and if it is true bred, it will have two factors of which both, I'm just marking it as a color, both will be providing you or both will be responsible for giving the color red. If it is homozygous, that is what is called as true bred. And the other true bred, which is white flower color, it will have two factors. Okay, this is in one plant, the first plant, and this is in the second plant. In the second one also, there will be two factors responsible for producing the color, but rather than producing red color, this will be producing the color which is called as white. Okay, so for every character, Mendel proposed that for whatever character is present in an organism, that will be controlled by two or a pair of discrete particles. So if you are having, for say, 100 characters are present in an organism, there will be 100 pairs of factors which will be controlling that particular trait or that particular character. And it is these factors which are responsible for inheritance, or these particular discrete particles. Only these discrete particles are inherited to the next generation. No fluid, no character, etc. Only these factors is responsible for inheriting the character to the next generation. This is what is called as the law of unit characters. So what he said was that characters are controlled by, so this is important and that is to be noted here. It is a pair of discrete particles, means it is distinct or separate particles which are responsible for the appearance of particular character, phenotype or trait. And Mendel called them as unit factors, and now we can consider or we can correlate them as genes. So what he proved by this particular law is that what we discussed earlier, that is, the inheritance is not a process by which the traits are traits of the parents are blended, means it is not a fluid. If it is a fluid, it will blend to the body fluid, or it will mix up. It does not mix up. That is why he called them as discrete particle. It cannot mix. They are separate, or they have their own individuality. They are blended through the media of blood or fluid. So this is what is called as the law of unit characters. So with this law of unit characters, he tried to prove that what is causing inheritance of character is not something which is fluid. It is discrete particles, and that discrete particles are the only ones which will be transferred to the offsprings. So that is with the first law, or the first principles of Mendel, which is the law of unit characters. And the second one is law of dominance. So in the law of dominance, what he stated was that when a pair of contrasting characters are brought together in a cross or a hybrid, only one trait will be appeared in the first generation. So this is nothing but the explanation of our monohybrid cross. So we'll take the example. So when two contrasting character, contrasting in the sense that when Mendel suggested, or Mendel selected parents, he identified the parents in such a way that the characters he selected was could be demarcated. That means it does not have if you mix black and white, there is no shade which is called as gray. Gray means it can be some white and it can be some black. So there is nothing which is called as gray, which is according to Mendel. He says that if two pairs of contrasting characters are brought together in a cross in the F1 generation, so if this is one contrasting character, purple, and this is white, which both are clearly distinct, and if you get purple, you can directly match it with one of the parent. If you get white, you can directly match with the other parent. So what he says is that if two pairs of contrasting characters, or not two pairs, if a pair of contrasting character is brought together in a hybrid or a cross, only one trait will be appeared in the F1 generation. So this is the F1 generation. In the F1 generation, you can see that only one trait is appearing. That is what I say. He did not get something which is a gray, which is mix up of both the parents. He got the results in such a way that the F1 generation, or the individuals or the offsprings of the F1 generation, either will take the character of one of the parent. In this case, you can see that it takes this particular parent with the purple color. If or in such cases, which is the character which is shown in the F1 generation will be considered to be the dominant allele, or the dominant trait, or the dominant phenotype, and the other which was not appeared in the F1 generation. So we took two parents with the contrasting colors. One appeared in the F1 generation, but the other didn't appear in the F1 generation. The one which appeared is called as dominant, and the other which did not appear, which was masked in the F1 generation, is called as recessive, or recessive trait. And another important point that should be noted here is that it is this, which is the dominant trait will be expressed even if there is only one dominant allele. That means in whatever the case may be, dominant allele or a dominant phenotype will be expressed in two situations. So obviously, if I take an example, this one is dominant here, so I am marking it as capital P, and this one as small p. So what happens is when this is formed, the F1, which is a hybrid capital P and small p. So here you can see that two of the individuals, or two different genotypes, expresses the same phenotype. That means this is one genotype, which is, I mark it here, capital P. This is one genotype which gives you the purple color, and this is another genotype which is giving you the purple color, which is capital P and small p. So these two genotypes gives you the color which is called as purple. So purple being dominant in this particular case, we can consider that the dominant trait will be expressed even if there is only one dominant allele, and that is nothing but the heterozygous. So a dominant phenotype or a dominant character or a dominant trait can be seen in an individual in two conditions or two genotypes if that individual is homozygous and if the individual is heterozygous. And the trait which is suppressed in this case is called, in the F1 is called as the recessive trait, and recessive traits can be expressed only in one condition because there is no heterozygous condition for a recessive one. So a recessive character or a recessive phenotype, for example, the white color in this example, will be expressed only in one situation when the genotype is small p, small p. That means in the homozygous condition. But dominant allele can be expressed in two conditions. One is in the homozygous dominant as well as the heterozygous condition. The recessive trait can be expressed only in one situation whenever it is in homozygous condition. So this is what is called as the law of dominance, and here you can see the explanations of what is homozygous, heterozygous, etc. This we have discussed it earlier, but for taking a quick recap, if you have forgotten these terminologies, to take a recap, I have again pasted it the definitions of such terms. So these are the two laws or two principles of Mendel. First one was the law of unit characters, where Mendel said that inheritance of characters is not with fluid-like particles, it is with the discrete particles, and this discrete particles comes in pairs for controlling a particular character. And the second one is law of dominance, in the sense that when two contrasting characters are crossed, the particular phenotype or the particular character which is expressed in the F1 generation will be the dominant of the two. You take the you cross two, among the two, the one phenotype, if you take purple and white, these are the two phenotypes, and the one phenotype of the two which is expressed in the F1 generation. That means if purple is expressed in the F1 generation, that purple is considered to be dominant and the other one is considered to be recessive. With this we take a break for this particular discussion, and we'll discuss the third and fourth laws of Mendelian or Mendelian laws in the next session. Thanks for hearing.